All right, you guys. So, like I said, we are starting a new module today. So we're moving on to Module 2, Composition through Grouping and Harmony. So we're still looking at composition. So we're looking at this in kind of three parts because it's just too much to pack all these principles in and have you digest them and then turn around and show how to use these things all at one time. So we're breaking it down into these smaller chunks. But the whole time I want you to be thinking about always keeping these principles in the back of your mind for all the design work that you do, whether it's page layout, whether it's, illustration work, graphic design, designing like we just did for the Blue Mountain Coffee Beanery. We're just going to continue to build on these principles. And so in this, next module, we're still talking about placement division. That still plays a big role. We're not forgetting about those principles, but now we're also bringing in grouping and harmony and how we use all these principles together to create composition. So for today's demonstration, we're going to work with two resource files. One is called BMC, so that's for Blue Mountain Coffee, business card, simple associations. And then we have another file called simple associations with simple shapes. So the business card file is a TIFF file. And so you'll need to open that in Photoshop because it's a layered document. And then the just the simple associations with simple shapes, that's an Illustrator document. And so you'll want to open that through Illustrator. So while we're exploring these principles of composition, we're also still exploring Photoshop and Illustrator, and just getting getting some practice working with these programs. All right. Now, when you open your document, it's not going to look like this. I have a whole extra layer. I didn't want to put you guys through the dots thing again, having to create the dots and organize the dots. So this part, I'm just going to talk about and demonstrate. And then the second part of this, we'll be working with our simple shapes. And then that's when you all are going to take some time to experiment with creating different types of associations with these shapes. All right, so I'm going to start with the dots regarding the principles of grouping. We'll take a look at the visual and thematic associations that are either enforced or negated through proximity to other elements. We'll start by experimenting with different ways visual elements can be grouped to present visual messages in a quickly and easily understood format. So visual grouping aids in the discovery of helping the viewer make useful connections between elements. When a viewer first encounters a group of objects, whether it be a flock of birds or a block of text, they tend to see the group as a singularity. For instance, a designer can avoid overwhelming the viewer by 10 elements of complex add, including headline, subhead, text, several images, captions, logos, etc., and group them in such a way at first glance, the viewer sees 3 separate and distinct areas of interest instead of 10 individual items. And so we're going to kind of play around with messaging through these simple shapes. So right here you see in front of you 9 dots that are casually arranged with no obvious association between them. And I think the kind of messaging that we get from this is spontaneity, lack of real constraining, kind of composition, movement, and lack of order. Now, there's nothing wrong with that at all, if that is the message that you're trying to communicate with your composition. This is just one way to view this. So let's say I start to take these dots one by one. You guys have seen this before. I'm just going to make a real strict kind of alignment. No, you're going to get me to yawning now. No, it's okay. It's just, you know how when you hear a yawn, I know, it makes you want to yawn. Mm-hmm. You know, something I heard a long time ago, and this is completely off topic, but about yawning, that the sign of a psychopath is when someone yawns in front of them and they don't yawn, but they don't feel that, you know. Yeah, so now when if I yawn from somebody and nobody else yawns, or I'm like, I don't know about you. Note to self, yawn no matter what, if somebody else yawns. No psychopaths here. All right, so now we see an association where there's a strict alignment. Okay, and so what I mean by association is that we look at these dots and we're like, well, they're all equally spaced. We see kind of a grid system happening here. We don't know what's going on, but this message with this placement of these objects is telling me that this is a very strict environment. There are rules and they must be followed, and everything must fall into this kind of alignment. Very strict. But as we saw in a previous example in Module 1, if I take some of these dots, and let's just move them all up here. Oops. We've got these all grouped up here. And this is not the last time we're going to see an arrangement like this. Now what do we see? It's not random at all. And it's not a strict alignment forcing a grid system that we have to stay within.
Is it a formation?
A formation?
Yeah.
Two separate groups. Yeah. And so that, and I mean, they're just dots. We can't really make a whole lot from that, except that we do feel like now some kind of a story is being told. You know, we want to know, why are these dots all up here together, huddled, and these three way down here apart from each other? So there's some sort of message going on. You know, there's definitely grouping going on, and it's grouping in a way that's making a statement. All right? And all of them make statements. Every example that I showed you made a statement. So the first one was spontaneous, movement, energy, fly by the seat of your pants, you know, and then the second one was very strict, get in line, stay in this framework, don't diverge from it. And then this one is very different from the other two. So we're not seeing a grid system at all. There's definitely not any spontaneity in this. There's a separation happening. And we're seeing these groupings. And we see one group that's larger, one group that's smaller. We could see this smaller group as being minimalized in somehow or excluded. But we don't know. They're just dots. They're never going to tell us what their secret is. But it is, it's compelling. You know, you look at it and you wonder what's going on with that. So now we're going to take these same types of ideas, and we're going to apply them to our shapes and make some simple associations. So right now, the way this is set up for you is spontaneous. It's random, a little bit chaotic. There doesn't seem to be any kind of association between these shapes whatsoever. They're just kind of what I call plink plunk. They're just kind of put in there, and that's it. Where they land is where they live. All right, so what I want you guys to do, and ours will not all be the same, okay? But I want you to create just by moving these shapes around. And if you're not used to Illustrator, let me just give you a quick little tour again. I'm going to lock my dots layer and turn it off. I didn't mean to turn it on. You can see that we just have these simple shapes in here. And all you need to do is just select them using the selection tool to move them. I prefer that you not scale them, but you can change their color. So if you'd like to overlap some of these shapes in interesting ways, unfortunately right now all the shapes are white. So if we overlap one white shape over a black shape or over another white shape, it will disappear. So if you want to, say, overlap this shape over another white shape, while it's selected, if you go to your color picker box, you can choose black and make it the opposite. So you can turn the colors inside out, that's fine, but try not to scale them. And so what I want you to do in this first exercise is to create something that feels very heavily balanced with some symmetry, all right? So you want to create associations just by moving these shapes and placing them, arranging them in a way where they have more of a meaningful association with each other and in a way that conveys the message of balance and symmetry. Okay, so I'm going to play with mine up here. You guys can work with yours down there. And you can kind of glance up and see kind of what I'm thinking. You can look around the room, check out what your neighbors are doing. And then we will take a moment and just have a little open discussion about our arrangements. Okay, so I had you guys turn in just what you put together for this first part of this demonstration. So this one was mine. It's what I came up with just very strict symmetrical balance. So that was, the way I chose to align things. And I could give it a little bit of a twist by just moving this to another location, and now it's got a little bit more, yeah, like an eyeball, kind of looking around. But overall, it's a very, very symmetrical, balanced piece. Let's look at this one. So this one is loose. It's yours? Yeah. So again, I think this when you look at it, the only thing that kind of is the variation in it is the banding of the gradient. It's just a little bit, but that's not a bad thing. It kind of gives it some visual, that little hint of spontaneity, something that gives it some extra visual interest, kind of works against the strict balance of this. But overall, when you can't get more balanced, everything is equally weighted. You could draw a line through the center of this and have a mirror image on both sides. Jose, is this one yours? Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're lacking some balance here. But I like the way it makes a face. Mm-hmm. This might actually be more appropriate for the next redo that we're going to do, where we show, where we bring groupings together in a way that promotes creativity, spontaneity, through associations, where these shapes actually begin to have an association with each other. So the very first example that I showed you was spontaneous, but it was chaotic, disorganized, zero association between those shapes, if you'll remember what that looked like. And remember, it's on the video if you want to go back and see it. These are still, they're still spontaneous. I wouldn't say chaotic. There's not really a sense of strict balance in this at all, or symmetry. But we are seeing more of an association with these visual elements, because the first thing I saw was a face when I saw this. And I don't know if that's what you intended or not, is it? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. And so, good job on creating an association with simple shapes and what you had to work with, because I think we got it. But we're missing the whole hard symmetry thing, the equal balance. This one is Gates. That's cool. I love it. It's like a little man with a big belly. I don't know. I like it.
It looks like an old alarm clock.
Yeah, it does. You need to put some hands on here and a clock face. Yeah, so this is fun. I like the way you took these simple shapes. You created this very hard, strict form of balance and symmetry, but you also gave it a real gestural feel. You know, it has that kind of a human quality to it. It's funny how we can stack certain simple shapes like Jose did and like Gates did, and be able to see a human element in that, something that feels, you know, gestural or expressive. And so we definitely see that in these. This one is titled Hey, and it was by Kendrick. I'm sorry. I knew that didn't sound right when it came in our mouth. It's like that ending didn't sound quite right. So this is fun. There's definitely a strong association going on. Definitely some sort of an interesting message. Have no idea what it is. Gates says it kind of looks like a sign that you see when you go into a women's restroom. And I think it's because of simple associations that we use in public all the time. You see the circle, the triangle, the two posts. It's a girl. That's what they always put on the door.
I was kind of thinking that plus the LG logo.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first thing I kind of saw, and I just kind of like put those.
Kind of playing off of that, because there is a face in the LG logo. Yeah. So we've got some asymmetry going on here. But I'd say that the way you pull all these shapes, you know, together in proximity, I think that there's a strong association. It has a very symbolic kind of look to it, and what I mean by that is I don't know what kind of symbol it is, but it looks like it's a symbol for something, you know, and so all these things, you know, it looks very cohesive. Putting everything inside of the circle the way you did creates this sense of symmetry, and then inside you're using, you know, very simple shapes, but the way that they are arranged gives you more of an asymmetrical kind of arrangement. So it's an interesting play between the two, but I do see a strong sense of symmetry in that. And then we got Chuck. His shapes. This also has a very human quality to it, to me. Or maybe a bird quality, an ornithology quality to it. Because of that beak right there. Yeah. And it looks like it could be a very simple looking bird. But yours is kind of similar to Kendrick's in that there's, you know, this strong sense of symmetry, and with this triangular shape, just by putting it on the side, kind of tilts that off a little bit, or makes it a little more interesting, as opposed to taking it and putting it, you know, right here at the top and rotating it. It's hard to get that in the rotation mode. You know, if you did something like that, then it would be a really strict form of balance and symmetry. But the way you had it to the side, I think just gives it a little bit of visual interest.
It kind of reminded me of like a, you know, like the profile on a coin.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. I didn't mean to scale that. Oh well, I'm going to close all these out anyway. All right, so the second one, we want to go for creativity, informality, asymmetrical organization. So some of the examples that we just saw that kind of fall into that category would be this one. This kind of aligns much more with the third category. So we're definitely not going for chaos and disconnection in this last organizing of these elements. And we're not going for symmetry either. But we are going for meaningful associations that show spontaneity, creativity, and asymmetry. So with these shapes, I want you to do a redesign. You can create a whole new set of layers for those shapes if you want to keep your first version. But let's work with these shapes and create another arrangement, another composition that shows, that groups the objects in a way that shows creativity, informality, and asymmetrical organization. So since I forgot to record this first part, I'll just go back and talk about these. So this one was mine. It just is what it is. I made some associations. I didn't have anything that I really referenced from my mind when I was thinking about this, like, trying to represent something that we would recognize in real life. But I did try to bring something together that made it look more cohesive and like these pieces belong together, make it creative, spontaneous, and asymmetrical. And then we have Catherine's, and so she was kind of exploring the 180-degree rule for like setting up camera angles and the rules that you don't break when you're capturing a dialogue between two or more subjects. And so she brought these elements together in closer proximity to create this sense of cohesion, create meaningful relationships now between those objects. They're definitely not just chaotic and randomly floating about the composition window. Then we have Sarah Coons. And so this is kind of, symbolic of maybe things growing, trees, shrubs, outdoors, but only using very simple geometric shapes. And I thought it was interesting. It's not symmetrical. It's very asymmetrical, very creative. And I felt like there was a story being told with how these objects were positioned that I think really helped kind of elevate that idea of nature. And, specifically inclines on a landscape and how you see these structures follow that landscape and create a certain type of trajectory. Okay, and then whose is this? You want to talk about yours? Or you want me to talk about it? I kind of see something very similar in this as I did Sarah's in a way. I don't know if I just got it stuck in my head now, but this is Kira Ireland's. And the way these rectangles are positioned to make me think of literal stair steps. And watch your last step because there's a ball to trip over at the bottom. But also just make, something really grand up here. And that it belongs with this shape here. They're not connected, but they have a relationship to each other. Maybe it's because they're reminiscent shapes. This one down here looks like it wants to support the orb up top. And then, I don't know, the triangle seems a little random. It hasn't quite found its spot yet. This, it just makes me want to move it and put it straight smack dab under that. But then again, I shouldn't do that because we're trying to get detached from, in this one, being too symmetrical. But I do see it's definitely not chaotic. It's definitely not random. I'm seeing very clear associations, especially with what's going on between these objects. My eye wants to start here and follow it all the way down here. So, I don't know. Maybe these are the monsters under the stairs. Possibly. I would maybe put them closer to the stairs and point them up at them a little bit. And then we got Gates. Very creative. Very creative. We're moving against symmetry, so definitely asymmetry. Definitely some clear associations here. I mean, literally, because this has such a figurative quality to it. Would you like to talk about this, Gates? It's just so funny. I don't know. This little thing in particular. Yeah. This should make a noise, like a, when it moves, maybe. I don't know. I feel that.
A new species.
Okay, and this one is loose? Yeah. So tell us about it. Yeah. Definitely creative, spontaneous. It's very symmetrical, though.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Sometimes you just can't get away from it. But decent, very good associations. So I like how you took those shapes and turned it into something that is relatable to all of us. It's something that we can all look at and recognize right away. Isn't it funny how some of these just automatically make us think of certain things immediately? And they're just simple shapes. And all we did was just place them and rotate them and stack them. But we're just with these simple shapes, we're able to create messages of some kind. They're very vague, because they're just simple shapes, but they are messages that make us look at these things and ask questions. What's going on here? What are we trying to communicate in this message? Is this strict alignment, follow the rules, don't get out of the lines kind of arrangement? Is it, I don't know what the heck's going on. I've just got stuff everywhere and there's no association. Or is it, these objects have associations to each other and they're meaningful. And we don't even really have to understand what these objects are, but we see something taking place where things are coming together and coming together to form some sort of message. Oops. So that's enough of simple shapes. So now we'll move on to the business card part. But one of the things that I want to say before I wrap this part up, and this is how I want you to think about these simple shapes, because there really is a connection between this and what we're getting ready to do. So think of headlines, text blocks, areas of color, images, and logos in terms of their overall shapes. Think of those as a message that can be strengthened through a vocabulary of visual associations. And, you want to think about the elements themselves as the nouns in our language, in our vocabulary. And the way we group them and place them is the verb. That's what puts them in motion. That's what helps give them their meaning. So they work hand in hand. So if associations and messages can be established, implied, or denied simply by moving 9 white dots around a black square or moving these simple shapes around a black square, imagine the power that a designer has at their disposal given images, text, blocks of color, and more. So you want to now start thinking about, when we start arranging these visual elements into these compositions, I want you to think about the dots and the shapes and how those could represent photos, illustrations, blocks of type, color, graphic design elements, logos. And you have all of these elements that need to fit in this composition window. And you need to do it in a way that's going to convey the message that it's supposed to convey. And so you could have just excellently executed designed elements. But if they're not scaled properly and they're not placed properly, the meaning gets lost. So we're going to spend a lot of time working out how do we handle all of these elements. I know that was something that you all probably struggled with the very most in the first assignment. You had pictures you had to add into your scene, and all I asked you to do was think about placement and division. That was it. Divide the space, place the objects. I knew that intuitively, for a lot of you, things like scale and font choice and color would also come to play. But for others, maybe you weren't quite sure what to do with any of those elements. Okay, so hopefully in this module, you'll approach all of this content looking at all those elements as objects that need to be placed. in a way that creates a visual hierarchy, that makes it easy for the viewer to understand, get all of the information, have it organized in a way where it's easy to process and digest. So let's move on to our next images. So in this next one, we're going to work with a business card, and I've got to open up Photoshop. But if you want to go to the to download the file, which I think you guys already have, I'm pretty sure all of you have done that by now. Resource files for class demonstration. We're going to be looking at the business card. So now we're going to work with a document that is relatable. I keep saying that word, but that is not the word that I'm trying to come up with. It is, I'm drawing a blank today on this one word. It'll come to me. It means relatable in a sense. Representational. That's it. Golly, man. Sometimes when I'm trying to think of things, I feel like a toddler digging through a toy box, and they're just bent all the way over with their legs sticking up out of the top, and they get to the very bottom and they finally find that toy. There it is. That's how I feel when I'm searching for some of these words sometimes.
It's quite the middle.
I hate it when it you forget what you're going to say, you know,
All right, so here is our second example file that we're looking at here today. BMC, Blue Mountain Coffee, business card, simple associations. So when you first open your document, it's going to look like this. So, and these are things like what I'm getting ready to read from my notes is things that we've already talked about. So this isn't new. Now we're just applying it to grouping and harmony. So effective grouping streamlines the viewer's search for meaning and information. The designer helps the viewer by deciding which elements should visually relate to each other. So this first business card example, the information is packed into a single mass, potentially frustrating a viewer's search for a specific phone or fax number. The name at the top seems to relate more to the business card's edge than to its content. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of a redesign, create a second version of this, where we're going to create some visual hierarchy with these type elements. And also, we want to create more of an association with this shape right here that sits behind the type. I mean, it's fine. It gets the job done. It makes the type, viewable. I wouldn't say that it's easy to read at this point. I mean, I can read it. It's easy to read, but not reading the way I'm talking about reading for all intents and purposes of being good designers and creating that visual hierarchy. There is no visual hierarchy in this. So it's all just running together. Miranda French, Chief of Operations, 123 Mocha Lane, Columbia, California, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's all the same font style, font size, font color. There's no visual speed bumps, to create some divisions between this content. And so it's all just run on, okay? And then we have this shape in the background. Its purpose is to serve the type and support the type to make it easier to read. And it does that. But it also creates a disconnect with the background. So it's just like punching a hole through it. It just, it's causing it to lack cohesion overall. So, and I don't really have a problem with the logo. I mean, it's fine. We might tinker with it a little bit. But we're going to do a couple of really simple things to fix this. And we're not going to introduce anything new. We're going to use all the elements that we have here. So we have our logo, which is right here. And then we have the white block in the background and your layers. So if you open your layer window open, you should see exactly what I have here. I've got the beans texture of the smart layer. I'm not sure what's behind that. Oh, there's a little, this is kind of another way we can think about this. That's what that is. All right, so I'm going to turn the logo back on, and I'll just lock this layer for right now. I don't want to mess that up. So right now, I'd like to make some changes to the type content here. So I don't care for the font style, first of all. I want it to be not that heavy. So it looks too heavy to me. We might play around with color, maybe have Veranda French as a different color, maybe sample a color from these coffee beans and apply that to the name. We're going to make Chief of Operations. It's going to be, think of that as like a sub-headline. So her name is the headliner, you know, in this box down here, and then we have her title. So we're going to reduce the size of that and the font weight as well. We're going to create some, and we're going to change the font style of all of this, really. And we're going to create some divisions in these little small paragraphs. So one paragraph would be the name and the title. The next would be the address and zip code. The next section down would be the phone numbers, and then maybe just run this web address outside of that box entirely. Maybe we could run it in stark white letters at the very base of this business card, and it would help kind of balance out what's going on up here with the logo. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking for a font style that I'd much rather work with. Now, when you are working with large amounts of type, so think of it like this. I don't mean just like paragraph type in columns over and over and over, but I mean like in something like this where you have a hierarchy that you're trying to create, and you have a person's name, title, and then other information. I like to choose a font that's going to stylistically work with the design. So it needs to kind of work thematically. But also I'm going to choose a font style that has a lot of different options. So I'm not going to choose a font style that just has one bold-faced option or one outward-faced option. It needs to have a variety of options, from bold to italic to regular, medium, light, you know, all of these different options. Because once we commit to a font style for all this content, we want to stick with that. But we want to have options for the weight of those fonts at different levels. And that's also what's going to help us create this visual hierarchy. So whatever font style we end up going with, the boldest choice will be applied to the person's name. The second boldest choice will probably be applied to Chief of Operations. And then we'll choose a regular or a lighter font style for the rest of this content of the address and the phone number, and we're going to create spaces in between those chunks of information. And then we'll float the Blue Mountain web address at the very bottom beneath the window. And we want it to align with the window as well. So we create this sense of continuity and alignment coming down. We don't want it flanking over the sides of the box. We want the first letter and the last letter of that line of type to align with the edges of our box here. So let's take a look at some font styles. Oh my gosh, you guys, class is over. All right, so I'm going to get this video uploaded. We'll just call it a day. Please, on Wednesday, we're going to start with redoing this business card, and we got some other fun stuff to do, okay? So you guys have a great day. Sorry I did not mean to go over. I totally lost track of time.